I've always disliked you. Not going to work and not earning a single cent. Just sleeping at home all day. You might as well leave right now." Miranda, my mother-in-law, yells, brandishing a kitchen knife at me. I fear she might actually kill me. My heart is pounding so hard, I can hear it. "Why don't you say something?" Miranda, still holding the knife, advances towards me. If I keep quiet, she might actually stab me. "Oh, okay, I understand. Please lower the knife. I'm begging you." Miranda accuses me of not earning anything, but in reality, it's my husband Frank who hasn't brought in a single cent. I'll make her regret kicking me out. Rewinding to 2 years back then, I lived in Frank's in-laws' house with him and Miranda, just the three of us. "Karen, I'm really grateful you moved into my parents' home. Thank you," Frank said, expressing his gratitude. After father-in-law suddenly passed away from a stroke, we started living in the in-laws' house. "If you guys don't mind, feel free to move in and use this place," Miranda suggested following my father-in-law's funeral. The in-laws' house is a bit larger than a typical house. My father-in-law, who had worked his way up to a senior manager at an auto parts manufacturer, earned a decent income. "Really? That would be great. If we could live in the parents' home, we're familiar with it, and I've been wanting to move out of the apartment." Frank was eager about Miranda's suggestion. Indeed, it wasn't a bad deal for us. Due to the impact of an infectious disease, Frank's company underwent major layoffs. Frank was among those laid off, and is currently searching for a job while working part-time at a grocery store. I, on the other hand, work full-time at a securities firm, and my earnings are just enough to keep us afloat. "Miranda, about living in the in-laws' house, I'd be really grateful if we could. Thank you." Thinking it a good opportunity, I decided to live in the in-laws' house. However, I wasn't very close with Miranda, and hadn't talked much with her, so I was honestly anxious about living together. Could we get along? I wondered. Before moving into the in-laws' house, I discussed our future living situation with Frank. "I haven't really talked much with Miranda, and I'm worried about whether we can get along." "Don't worry. Even if things get bad with Mom, I'm on your side, Karen." Assured by Frank's words, I felt slightly relieved and moved into the in-laws' house a week later. "Welcome. Feel free to make yourself at home," Miranda greeted us. "Thank you. We appreciate your hospitality." Frank and I, starting our new life in the in-laws' house, had modest earnings and lived simply, but it was more comfortable than our previous apartment. On our days off, we could go out together, almost like when we were dating, a luxury we couldn't afford due to constant financial worries. I thought I could continue living happily with Frank in the in-laws' house. However, 3 months after we started living in the in-laws' house, Miranda's attitude towards me changed drastically. "Karen, what's the idea of moving into my house and not doing any cleaning or laundry?" "What? I always do them when I get back from work." Although Miranda sometimes did the chores when I came home late from work, I usually took the initiative in cleaning and laundry. "You're married to Frank and staying in my house. Shouldn't it be normal for you to take care of everything? Especially since you're living here?" I thought, wasn't it you who suggested we move here? But I couldn't bring myself to argue with Miranda. "I invited you to live here to lessen my burden, you know. Why can't you understand that without me having to spell it out? You're so slow." I had no idea Miranda felt that way. It was as if I was just a housekeeper. Stunned, I could only stand there speechless. From then on, Miranda started harassing me daily. "Hurry up and clean. I don't want to hear any excuses about being tired from work." She knew I was tired from work, yet still forced household chores on me. I wished she would help, instead of just waiting for me to do everything. "Are the dishes done? Have you cleaned yet? You really can't do anything without me telling you. Maybe you're late from work because you're not competent enough." "I haven't finished them yet. I'm sorry." "You're so inefficient. Hurry up, or it'll be morning before you know it." Miranda would kick me as she said these things. Why do I have to endure this treatment? The daily harassment from Miranda continued, leaving me physically and mentally exhausted. This lifestyle persisted, and I eventually fell ill. "Miranda, I'm sorry, but it seems I've caught a cold. Can you take care of the housework for me?" What are you talking about? You can clean even if you have a cold, can't you? I have a high fever and can't move my body properly. Ugh, you're so useless. Figure it out, okay? I'm not doing it. Despite my high fever, Miranda insists on making me do the housework. I really need to lie down. That day, since Frank had the day off from his part-time job, I asked him to help with the chores. Could you take over the housework until I feel better? What? You want me to do the housework? You should do it. I'm busy too, you know. Busy with what? You're not working every day. You're just lounging around today. Hey, that's not fair. I'm desperately looking for a job. It doesn't look like it. I don't see you looking at job listings. And you quit your part-time job. Living in your parents' home, you're honestly too lazy. I vented my frustrations at Frank. Lately, I've been losing affection for him, who just lazes around every day. Anyway, I'm busy, so you do the cleaning and laundry. Frustrated with Frank's uncooperative attitude, I reluctantly agreed. Fine, I'll do it. It's so hard to even stand. Cleaning, which usually takes less than an hour, took me 2 hours due to my limited mobility. While doing laundry, I felt sick and vomited in the bathroom. Trying to take a break, I rested on the living room sofa. What are you lounging around for? You don't have time for that. Get moving. While saying this, Miranda hit me and forced me off the sofa. If I were in good health, I could have finished everything before she had a chance to complain. Despite my high fever and hazy consciousness, I somehow managed to complete all the household chores, including cleaning, laundry, and cooking. The next morning, I immediately noticed something was wrong with my body. I can't move. I'm in too much pain. The strain from yesterday didn't help my fever, and my joints were incredibly sore. I had to call off work again. I still have a fever. I'm sorry, but I need to take another day off. That's okay. Be careful with the infectious diseases going around. Get well soon and come back to work. My boss was considerate and kind. If only Miranda and Frank could be like my boss. Having secured another day off work, I was about to go back to sleep when suddenly, Karen, come here right now! Miranda yelled, calling for me abruptly. I wonder what she wants this time. Struggling to keep my balance, I made my way to the living room where Miranda was. What's wrong? I was just about to go to bed because I'm not feeling well. Why are you home at this time? Usually you would have gone to work by now. I noticed your car was still here and wondered what happened. Looking at the living room clock, it was 8:30 a.m. Indeed, by this time, I should have already been at work. Yes, that's true, but I think I overdid it with the housework yesterday, and my fever hasn't subsided, so I took another day off. What? Are you saying it's my fault? I'm not saying it's your fault, but if you had helped with the chores, maybe I could have rested and wouldn't need to take another day off. After saying this to Miranda, I went to the kitchen to drink some water as my throat was dry. Miranda followed me into the kitchen. Wait a minute. You should be earning money and contributing to the house. You know Frank is struggling without a job. Who do you think will earn the money? I realized that Miranda saw me as a convenient woman who earns money without complaint and can be treated like a housekeeper. I think that's why she invited us to the in-laws' house. Having lived a comfortable life off the earnings of my late father-in-law, who seemed to have hired housekeepers, Miranda couldn't lower her standard of living. But Miranda, with the infectious disease going around, it would be irresponsible to go to work in this condition. The moment I said that, Miranda grabbed a knife and yelled at me. Don't talk back. You're just a moocher, not going to work and just sleeping at home. If you're not going to earn a cent and not do any housework, then just get out of this house. Her eyes bloodshot, Miranda thrust the knife towards me. I realized I might actually be killed if I didn't leave right now. My heart raced, but I was frozen in shock and couldn't move. Say something, will you? Paralyzed with fear, I finally mustered the courage to tell Miranda that I would leave. Oh, okay, I understand. Please lower the knife, I'll leave. Then leave now. Miranda, still holding the knife, yelled even louder. At that moment, Frank, hearing the commotion, came into the living room. Seeing Miranda pointing the knife at me, he panicked and intervened. What the heck are you doing? Put that dangerous thing away now. Frank scolded Miranda and made her lower the knife. This was my chance. While Miranda was distracted by Frank, I seized the opportunity to flee the in-laws' house and headed for my parents' home. Miranda kept saying I didn't earn anything, but in reality, it was Frank who wasn't earning. I'll make her regret kicking me out. The parents' home and the in-laws' house are about an hour's drive apart. As I drove, I regained my composure and was filled with anger towards Miranda. Pointing a knife at someone is unforgivable, no matter the circumstance. With these thoughts, I stopped my car in a grocery store parking lot, about 5 minutes away from the in-laws' house, and called the police to report that Miranda had threatened me with a knife. The police said they would go to the in-laws' house to talk to Miranda, but asked, "Can we speak with you at the scene to get your account of what happened?" What? Go back to that house? I thought I was going to be killed. I can't face Miranda again. It's too scary. It was a ridiculous idea. I had been terrified Miranda would kill me. I refused to go back to the in-laws' house and explain the situation over the phone, including the past incidents of assault. Understood. We'll speak with Miranda about it. After speaking with the police, I drove for about an hour to my parents' home. I explained everything to my parents and decided to stay there for a while. Feeling unwell and unable to do anything, I finally had a good night's sleep in my parents' home for the first time in a while. The next day, feeling much better, I managed to go to work, but throughout the day, I received several missed calls from Miranda and Frank. I ignored them during work, but the calls kept coming even after I got home. Reluctantly, I answered the phone. "Yes, what is it?" "What do you mean, what is it? How could you just leave like that? You abandoned Frank, and I heard you reported me to the police." "You're the one who told me to leave, threatening me with a knife. If Frank hadn't stopped you, I thought you were going to kill me. Of course I reported it." "I wouldn't really kill you. I didn't think you'd actually leave. Come back home right now." "I'm not coming back to that house ever again. Frank doesn't even try to work, and I'm considering divorce." I said that and hung up the phone. Within 5 minutes, Frank called. I didn't want anything to do with Frank or Miranda anymore, but I answered the call. "What do you want?" "Mom told me you're thinking about divorce. Isn't that too sudden?" "It might be sudden, but you never seem to try to find a job. I can't stay with someone like that." "I am trying to find a job." "If you were really trying, you could have asked for more shifts at your part-time job to help with our finances." "I was trying to work hard too. What do you know? You don't understand how the layoff affected me. Fine, if that's how you feel, I'll give you a divorce." Frank said that and abruptly hung up the phone. I never wanted to say such things to Frank, but he wouldn't look for work, and he did nothing to defend me from Miranda's harassment, even though he knew it was happening. I moved to the in-laws' house because Frank had promised. "If anything happens, I'll be on your side." That's what I had thought. 2 days later, as he had said on the phone, Frank sent the divorce papers and my belongings that I had left at the in-laws' house to my parents' home. Why did I even marry such a person? We used to love each other, but now I feel nothing for him. Let Miranda, who chased me out, and Frank live happily ever after, and regret chasing me away. The next morning, now divorced and alone, I enjoyed some personal time at my parents' home, for the first time in a while, thinking about Frank and Miranda. That's when it happened. "Hello, this is the police. Following your report, Miranda admitted to brandishing a knife. She has been arrested for threatening behavior and wants to settle, but what do you want to do?" "Really? No way I'm settling. Please tell her I absolutely refuse any settlement." I was elated when the police called to say Miranda had been arrested. There was no way I was going to settle with someone who had exploited and tried to kill me. Hearing Miranda had been caught, I clenched my fist in triumph, proudly telling the police that I would not settle. Let Miranda regret her actions in prison. After about 30 days in detention, Miranda was sentenced to 2 years in prison. I thought this would teach her a lesson. That's what I thought. But a month after divorcing Frank, he suddenly showed up at my parents' home. Just when I thought things had settled down with Miranda, now Frank. "Long time no see. Have you been well?" Frank stood at the door when I answered the bell, showing no signs of remorse. What do you want? Please leave. At that moment, my parents were out, and I was the only one at home. Startled by his sudden visit, I knew I had no business with him anymore. I said things in the heat of the moment about divorce, but I want you back, please. Frank was pleading for reconciliation, but it was too late. I have no intention of coming back. Besides, we're already divorced. Please don't say that. Can't you come back? In the end, Frank begged me to return to the in-laws' house crying. Concerned about being watched by the neighbors, I let Frank inside to talk. So, as I asked earlier, why did you just show up out of the blue? I don't have anything to do with you anymore, and your sudden visit is troubling. Actually, Frank started to speak slowly in response to my question. Since you left, I've had no income and can't sustain a living. That's why I was wondering if you could come back. How much more useless can this man be? He agreed to the divorce, and now he's asking me to return because he has no money? That's too convenient. Why don't you just work hard yourself instead of expecting me to come back? Well, that's true, but I haven't found a job yet. I'm really trying. I think I'll find something soon. Please. There's no way I'd return to the in-laws' house after all this. Frank, do you really expect me to believe that now? I've been asking you to work ever since we were married, and you still don't have a job. You probably think I'll come back if you say anything. There are plenty of part-time or contract jobs, even if you can't get a full-time one. It's clear you just don't want to work. Plus, Miranda threatened me with a knife, and I was genuinely scared. If I return to the in-laws' house, it'll be the same as before. I'll do all the chores while you do whatever you want, right? Even though Miranda is arrested for now. I won't let that happen again. Next time, I'll definitely be on your side. No, I'm sure Miranda will do the same thing again. It's not normal for a mother-in-law to threaten her daughter-in-law with a knife, right? I can't live with someone like that. Frank fell silent, having nothing to say. If you have nothing to say, then that proves my point. Can you leave now? Despite being asked to leave, Frank didn't move. My anger started to rise. I'm telling you to get out of this house! Startled by my shouting, Frank hurriedly left my parents' home. Although he left quietly that day, he began showing up at my parents' home every week, begging me to come back, regardless of whether my parents were home or not. My parents even said his behavior was abnormal. Karen, just come back, will you? Frank's yelling could be heard from the doorstep one day. Again, he shows up without learning his lesson. It's a nuisance to the neighbors, and I wish he would just give up. No matter how many times he comes, the result will be the same. I'm not going back. Please stop. It's bothersome when you show up unannounced like this. A phone call or a message would be more appropriate. But a call or a message wouldn't convey our feelings, right? There's meaning in meeting face to face and saying it directly. Despite my protests, Frank only insisted on me coming back. It was clear he didn't want to work anymore and was only after my earnings. So you say you're just after my money, aren't you? I don't want to see you anymore, so don't come here. If you come again, I'll call the police. I threatened to call the police to make him leave, but knowing Frank, he might keep coming back to my parents' home. Thankfully, Frank didn't show up at my parents' home for a while after that. It seemed he finally gave up. I was on the verge of losing my temper with Frank, who had become almost like a stalker. Just when I thought I was free from Frank, he called me a week after I moved. So you really have no intention of coming back? How many times do I have to tell you? It's annoying. Fine, then I'll kill you and myself. Why should I be killed by him? I haven't done anything wrong. Finally, I exploded with all the pent-up emotions and anger. Why should I be killed by you? Bring it on. A worthless man like you, who doesn't work and relies on a woman's income, can't kill anyone. No, I wasn't serious. Don't say such things in the first place. I've been putting up with you, but you're an awful man. If you want to die, do it alone. Don't drag me into it anymore. I said this forcefully over the phone. Okay, I won't say that anymore. It's too late. I'm reporting to the police that you threatened to kill me. I hung up the phone, thinking that would make Frank behave. As I told him, I reported to the police that Frank had threatened me. My ex-husband said he would kill me. Is that so? Where is this ex-husband of yours? I think he's at the in-laws' house. We need to hear more about this. Could you come to the station? At the police station, I explained the situation. Even after our divorce, he's been showing up at my house every week. I told him we're divorced and I don't need him to come anymore. Then one day, he called, demanding reconciliation, and when I refused, he threatened to kill me. Would you like us to arrest your husband if his statement matches yours? The police asked me. Yes, I would prefer that. He's been acting like a stalker, and I honestly want him arrested as soon as possible. After telling the police this, I left the station. That night, I received a call that Frank had been arrested. Is this Karen's phone? Yes, what happened? We've confirmed from Frank, your ex-husband, that he did indeed say he would kill you. He hasn't harmed you, but considering your fear, we've arrested him. Finally, I would no longer be harassed by Frank and Miranda. I was so relieved that I danced on the spot when I received the call from the police. Really? Thank you. Now I can finally relax. After hanging up, I felt glad that I had never given in to Frank and Miranda. I shuddered to think what might have happened if I had returned to the in-laws' house. They were people who could threaten with a knife and uttered death threats. Eventually, both were arrested, bringing me peace of mind. Frank always relying on my earnings without working, and Miranda constantly harassing me with household chores, had dug their own graves. If Frank is charged with threats, he might face 2 years in prison just like Miranda. They should reflect on their actions in jail. Later, Frank was indeed convicted for his threats and sentenced to jail, joining Miranda for a 2-year sentence. This brought me a sense of calm. However, there's a chance they might come to my house or my parents' home after being released. Considering this, I decided to move with my parents. Dad, Mom, if we stay here, they might come back. Should we move? Yes, it's a shame to leave our home, but your safety is more important. Let's move. Dad said that our lives are more important than clinging to our parents' home and decided to move. This way, even if they get released, nobody will be living in my parents' home anymore, and they won't know where we've moved to, so we'll be safe. 2 years later, when Miranda and Frank were due for release, they hadn't come to my new place. I had changed my phone number and email address so they couldn't contact me. During that time, about a year after Frank went to jail, I remarried a man I met through work. He's 2 years older than me, hardworking, kind, and feels like too good of a person for me. Unlike Frank, he actively helps with household chores. We are expecting a child and planning to build our home. With Frank, I couldn't even dream of such happiness. Now, I look forward to a happy and long life with my husband and our future child.